This is an NBC News special report.
I'm Chris Jansing, bringing you a special report on NBC News and MSNBC. Another night of protests across the country, many of which may face orders to disperse very soon. A curfew took effect in Minneapolis 1 hour ago, but in just the last couple of minutes, we have seen police there firing tear gas at protesters. Heightened tensions in a city that is now in its fourth night of protests following the death of George Floyd. And Minneapolis is where we find MSNBC weekend anchor Ali Velshi, who has been here throughout. And Ali, what an escalation we have seen play out over the last couple of hours and even the last couple of minutes. What's going on where you are, Ali?
Chris, we were walking with a group that had been assembled in front of the 5th Precinct. They started marching as soon as the curfew was imposed, an entirely 100% peaceful march. We'd walked several miles with them. We were toward the back of the group. We weren't in the front of the group. And suddenly, in an intersection in front of us, with about 2/3 of the group in front of us and about a third, including us, behind, state police in a number of cars supported by National Guard moved into the intersection, got out, and began firing entirely unprovoked at the group. They started firing tear gas and projectiles. I took one of them to my leg, what appeared to be a rubber bullet. But they were shooting at people. They were shooting tear gas out there. The crowd has now gone the other direction. Now, this direction here is where we started from, the 5th Precinct. We understand that there's National Guard at that location. Above us, there is a helicopter flying. It's a National Guard helicopter, a Black Hawk. So we don't know what's going on right now. It did serve to dissipate the march, but I can't say this enough. I've said it probably every time I've been on TV. This was a 100% peaceful march. And the police opened fire into it. There was no reason to do so. There was zero provocation. There wasn't a presence of police. They literally pulled in a number of cars into an intersection and opened fire with rubber bullets and with tear gas and flashbang grenades. So for now, there were thousands of people here. Some of them are that side of the police. Many of them have now gone back. You can see the street is now empty, but a peaceful march fired into by the police. Chris?
Was there any warning at all? I realize you're only one person and you're only in one location, but was there anything? Zero?
Nope. No, zero. Last night, there was a 15-minute warning. There were announcements from the police to say this is an illegal assembly. You will be arrested. There was nothing whatsoever. Literally, I don't know how far we were from the intersection. Suddenly, I actually just pointed to Evan, who's with us, and he's our security detail, and I said, "What's that? Those police cars?" And they pulled in. They got out of the car as if they were responding to an active situation. They lined up on the street and started firing. They stopped for a while. A few people from the crowd did decide to push further into the crowd, and they fired at them, but we were well behind. In fact, I was behind a car. I don't know how exactly they succeeded in hitting me, but they were firing, and those projectiles go a long way. After a few minutes, the protesters realized they were not going to win that running battle. There was some tear gas. I didn't get my mask on in time. That's how fast it happened. We typically know when things like this are going to happen. You see the police, you see them putting their masks on, so you know that gas is coming. We didn't see any of that. They hit us with the gas. I didn't get a chance to put the mask on. I was sort of dealing with that, and then I took the shot to the leg. So, but everybody else seems to be okay. I did see a couple people getting hit. Mostly the tear gas just makes your eyes burn and your throat burn, and that seems to have dissipated. We had some people who were putting milk on their face to clear up, but it did achieve the aim of getting that march to disperse. I just want to remind everybody, it was a peaceful march. There was nothing else going on. Chris?
One of the things that we have seen, and this isn't the first time or the first city today in which we've seen tear gas, is that people seem to just stay. They seemed almost oblivious to it, or at least they were willing to, and I know what tear gas feels like. You, unfortunately, much more recently in the last few minutes know what it feels like. It's a very unpleasant sensation. Was there an intensity to this that made people run? What can you tell us about the feeling at that moment?
So the thing that I've been saying for the last few nights here is the discipline with which the police and the National Guard have acted. It seems to have been a strategic decision not to engage with protesters, and I felt like that was continuing tonight. Now, remember, last night we had 500 National Guard officers. I think they upped it to 700. This morning they added another 1,000. Today, the governor activated every last National Guard member in the state. That's 13,000. I don't know how many were on the street. We heard a report that the National Guard presence was tripled on the street tonight. So the police have a lot more National Guard support. But I'm telling you, Chris, this looked like an emergency action. The police came out of nowhere, got into a line, and started shooting. It wasn't like they were on the side monitoring the group to see if there was any violence. There wasn't any violence. They just fired in to disperse the crowd. It was not something that I had seen. I've been watching this in Louisville. I've been watching it in other parts of the country. It didn't happen here. This is the first time we saw it.
Ali Velshi, we're glad you're okay, and we thank you so much. You and your crew stay safe, please. Let's go now to Miami-Dade County, to Miami City in particular. There have been mandatory curfews downtown. There has also been a few protests that have turned violent. Let's go to NBC News correspondent Sam Brock on the scene. Sam, what's been happening where you are?
Chris, good evening. This is sort of the inverse of what Ali was just describing. Out here, everything had been peaceful, and then there was provocation. After about 7 or 8 hours of peaceful protest, protesters came out here, started jumping on police vehicles. You'll see this one is all smashed up. There's a car burning over my shoulder just to the left over here as well. And recently, they were baiting police officers standing just inches away from them, and that prompted, Chris, a higher unit, a special response unit to come on in for reinforcements. So now you're seeing multiple lines. You've got all these guys over my shoulder right here. They've been there for most of the night. You have another set of police officers standing there with shields and riot gear, making sure that there's no aggression on that side of the police department. And let me show you something else, Chris, right here. This is a piece of concrete. It's been flung by protesters from across the street at police officers. That's part of what explains the chain of reaction that's going on right now. Now, in terms of where we stand right now, within the last 15 or 20 minutes, these officers stood with their shields and their high weapons and batons and walked this way and pushed the crowd back. It has since dispersed. We're not seeing anyone really except for a couple people sort of standing around right now. But Chris, in a situation that obviously is very volatile, after 7 or 8 hours of peaceful protest from the torch of friendship in Miami, which is symbolic of bringing immigrants into this country, where this all started today, it totally evolved and unfortunately devolved in front of the Miami Police Department into something that was much more violent and filled with tear gas. And as Ali said, they dispersed that a second ago. It does not feel good. It did do the trick this evening right now, though, in pushing people away that were threatening officers over my shoulder.
Does this comport in the way that this is playing out, Sam, with what police said they were planning to do today?
It did initially, Chris. The mayor of Miami, Francis Suarez, came out. He tweeted at about 1 or 2 o'clock this afternoon, there will not be Miami police in riot gear, which is exactly what you're seeing over my shoulder right now. Just protest peacefully. Go, you have the right to assembly. Do it is basically what he told people here. We know the history of the difficulties between the police community and communities of color in Miami. There are riots that go back 40 or 50 years. We all know about that. Just be peaceful to get your image and your message across. That's what was happening. And then I interviewed 3 or 4 people who basically told me they were out here for hours, standing on one knee like this, symbolizing what the police officer who killed George Floyd was doing, and that they were trying to send a message. But then all of a sudden, it's like someone turned on a switch, Chris. There were 4 people jumping on top of a police car, set it on fire, and that catalyzed this entire chain of events that quickly moved in a completely different direction. Chris?
Sam Brock, we're seeing a little bit of activity behind you that's very minimal. How long has it been since we've really seen some sort of major activity where you are? How long has this situation been the way it is now?
I would say this has been within the last 15 or 20 minutes that things have started to calm down. The turning point, Chris, was when the special response team came in and added to the ranks here. There were probably 20, 24 police officers on scene, Miami police officers. That quickly expanded to probably 50 to 100. They pushed the line all the way across the street in the other direction, and now you're not seeing as many people here. We are still getting reports, Chris, right now of looting going on at the Bayside Park, where people were peacefully protesting earlier today. Officers, I'm told, are out there on the bikes right now arresting some people who are looting. But in terms of the activity here, just the pure tension that was in the air. I watched as sirens were going off, cars were flying in, smoke was billowing earlier today. That has died down probably in the last 15 or 20 minutes.
Sam Brock, thank you very much. I believe that we can go back to Minneapolis. I believe we have Morgan Chesky, who is there as well. Do we have Morgan in Minneapolis now? The picture we're looking at is Los Angeles. Los Angeles has been the scene of quite a bit. There we go. Let's go back to Morgan Chesky. Morgan, very different scene than I saw you at an hour ago. Tell me what's been going on where you are in Minneapolis.
Unreal.
Well, we just had to reposition because state police, in conjunction with Minneapolis PD, is starting to enforce a very strict perimeter, and they're actually enforcing that curfew tonight that went into effect at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we're just on the other side of a bridge to give authorities a wide berth, because just beyond this bridge, we're seeing dozens of cruisers start to advance on any remaining crowd that's in place.